All right, it's time to be liberated from the chaos of working in your business. It's Scott Beebe, the head coach, the founder of the Business on Purpose platform. And we get this question on a variety of different occasions, and quite frankly, in a variety of different presentations. And the question revolves around rest. It could be asked in such a way of how much sleep do I need? What does rest look like for a small business owner? Do I even have time to rest as a small business owner? You know, I'm working night and day. My employees get to go home and sleep, show back up the next day, et cetera, et cetera. So we get this question all the time. And just recently, I had a really, really good day of rest. And I wanted to bring you into what that day looked like, and also give you some things that we're experiencing from a rest perspective that I think might not only be helpful from a coaching standpoint, but just to encourage you a little bit. First thing to note is it is not 100% a foregone conclusion that you will not rest as a small business owner. In fact, I think we need to dot that idea in the mouth. I think we don't need to assume that idea. I think through proper visioning, we need to set up a vision that, although seasonally might require some overwork, it is just a season. And we'll get out of that season and we'll get into another season. We certainly have to be intentional about that. I heard Timothy Keller, a pastor out of New York City, talking about when he mentioned to his wife that they were going to start a church in New York City. He told his wife, I think it's going to be about 3 years of really intense overwork. They got past the 3 years and his wife goes, hey, we're past the 3 years. Is this going to continue? And he'd gotten so into the overwork, so used to the overwork, because there wasn't a date set on that season. And so even just the seasonality of really putting in a lot of work, even that needs to be subject to a vision, and laying that vision out, laying that date out as to what that might look like. Principle I want to talk about rest. Rest is not a novel concept. It's not a sleep apnea concept. Rest is a beginning of time concept. It is literally in the book of Genesis. 6 days God created the earth. On the seventh day he rested. The idea of rest is not an optional idea. The idea of rest is not one of those things where we hear somebody say, hey, I only need 2 to 3 hours of sleep per day. Either they are the drastic exception, or they're just lying to you because it sounds good, or because they think that's what they need. But in fact, the human body doesn't operate that way. And largely, they're not in great health. You may not know that from the outside, but from the inside, they may not be in great health. And then you could argue and say, no, my grandfather got 2 hours of sleep a night. He's 90 years old. Okay, that's the exception. Let's not go on the exception. Let's go on the rule. God created all of us. He created rules and laws of biology. Sometimes there are freaks of nature, but they're very rare. If you know a freak of nature, very rare, then count it maybe just a simple pleasure in life that you get to associate with the freak of nature. Maybe you are a freak of nature. Statistically, it's not true, but maybe that's the reality. The bottom line is, though, on 6 days, God created the earth. On the seventh day, he rested. He set an example. He set a model. Not that he needed to rest, but he wanted to set a model that we need rest. So as a small business owner, I think from the outset, you've got to look at things and go, okay, if for a season it requires 7 days of work, I would even argue with you then, by the way. But let's say for a season, it has to be for a season, a few months, that you say, all right, it's going to require 7 days of work, but on this day. Now, I'm going to, again, push back, and I'm going to push for a 5 or 6 day work week. And when it comes down to it, I'm going to push the small business owner for a mandatory 3 to 4 day work week with an optional 1 to 2 days down the road, way down the road, okay? So with that, and by the way, those rest days are not necessarily going to be all rest days. Those are going to be days that you focus maybe on other priority elements where you're laboring. Could be emotional labor, physical labor, whatever that might be, but you've got the option to do that if you need to. And so that's what we work ourselves into at some point. I'm not saying that's what you have to. I'm just saying if you want to be a small business owner that really is not on the treadmill and you're falling under the guidelines that God himself put out of rest on the 6th day or the 7th day, then we begin to build some of that margin. Now, here's the other thing with marginal time that we've got to be very, very careful about, and this is what can happen on rest days. We end up not allowing ourselves to rest on rest days because we've packed them so full with, quote, leisure activities. As an introvert, there are a lot of leisure activities that are not restful. They're leisure-filled, but they're not rest-filled. The reason I'm doing this podcast is recently I had a day that was genuinely rest-filled. And by the way, it wasn't a Sunday. Sundays are not restful for us. We have church in the morning. A lot of times we have house church in the afternoons every other week. And then inevitably there's something going on every second or third Sunday. Sundays are not filled with rest. And so we've got to build a day, whether it's a Friday afternoon, a Saturday morning, a Saturday afternoon, to where we can nab some rest in there, to where we can come in and go, okay, this time we're not going to schedule anything, or we are going to schedule something, and that scheduled time is rest. And for me, that's reading a book, or it's playing a guitar with one of my kids, or it's going out and sitting on the dock, or whatever. That's what rest is to me. You've got to define what rest is to you. How do you define it? It's what gives you energy, what energizes you, not from a labor standpoint. Liberating small business owners from chaos energizes me. Doing this podcast energizes me, but from a more of a level of just kind of consumption, and not even a binge leisure consumption, but a consumption of something that's going to give you more energy. It's going to juice the batteries, and it's going to allow you to be quiet and to reflect. Part of rest needs to incorporate quiet, because only in the quiet are you going to be able to hear things that you will never be able to hear in the noise. The point of rest is not necessarily to hear anything, and yet a byproduct of rest is the ability to hear something really, really, really profound. Now, there's all kind of data talking about what the human body needs. I don't know what the latest numbers on that are. I've heard anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. I will tell you, I tend to get 6.5 to 7. It's kind of my sweet spot. 7 to 7.5 would be perfect. If I get anything over 8, usually I'm a little bit groggy, and actually I need another nap. I don't know how that works. Some of you probably do. But sometimes that's okay. Usually on a weekend, I don't mind sleeping a little bit late and taking a nap. In fact, at the day of this, or that rest day that I was telling you about, that's what I did. Slept a little bit late, ended up taking a nap, got a majority of a book read, spent time with my kids, spent time with Ashley in front of the fire, those sorts of things. That's what we did, and it was energizing. It was very, very energizing. And so, but we've got to be able to articulate for you as an introvert, for you as an extrovert, what does rest look like? And then fall under this banner. This has been in my prayer sheet for about 1.5 years. A friend of mine told this to me. He said, your rest points to God's rest. When you rest, you are effectually telling the God, the creator of this world, hey, when you said in Hebrews that Jesus upholds the world by the word of his powers, when you rest, you're essentially and effectually believing in that promise. And so when you rest, you are essentially telling God through your rest, hey, I'm following your direction. I'm following your lead, and I'm trusting that even though I'm not laboring right now physically, emotionally, I am trusting that everything I've been laboring for, you are upholding that. What a powerful, powerful statement. How much rest do you need? Well, I would say week to week, you need at least a day of it. Even though, especially here in the United States of America, we're not real good about taking that. And I would say at night, you need at least 6 to 8 hours at night. And then throughout the day, you need a couple little respite spots where you can just sit in the car when it's dead silent. You can sit in your chair. You can stand up, walk around, whatever that is, where there's not podcasts going on, there's not music going on, there's not other people's mouths going on. It is quiet for 2 minutes. Or 7 minutes, or 17 minutes, or whatever that looks like. But the bottom line, and the reason I wanted to talk about this podcast is because I want to make you think, what does my rest look like? And as it is with everything else, it's not just going to happen. We have to schedule it, we have to plan it. And we even have to ask that one thing question Gary Keller talked about. What's the one thing, as relates to rest, that I could do right now, that by doing that one rest thing, a lot of other things become unnecessary? What a powerful question. I hope you get some rest. I hope this has been helpful for you. And I hope you can honor the God who created you. by just being quiet and enjoying some downtime. I'll see you next time right here on the Business on Purpose podcast.